Okay, so today we're diving into something that's really at the heart of modern manufacturing, and honestly, something that I find super fascinating. We're talking about part fixturing and tooling, but
Hmm.
specifically through the lens of automation.
Sounds complex.
It can be, but that's why we're here,
Yeah.
to break it down. And actually, you guys sent in some really interesting material from a company called PowerSafe Automation.
Ah, yes, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool stuff, and our mission today is to really dig into how their innovative solutions are making a real difference in manufacturing. And we're talking about tangible improvements like better safety, increased efficiency, and more flexibility on the factory floor.
Right, and I think the key here is innovative because, the manufacturing landscape is constantly evolving.
Exactly. And PowerSafe seems to be right on the cutting edge, especially with their work on forming fixtures, those no-touch tools, which are becoming so important, the expanding role of 3D printing, and of course, those all-important test fixtures. So let's jump right in. What do you say?
Let's do it. I'm curious to see how they're approaching these different aspects.
Me too. And one thing that really stood out to me when I was looking at their material was the focus on practicality. It's clear that they're focused on developing solutions that are, well, first and foremost, useful in a real-world setting.
Hmm. Yeah, practicality is key. You can have the most brilliant idea in the world, but if it's not applicable, it's not going to make a difference.
So true. And that leads us perfectly into our first topic, forming fixtures. So as you know, these fixtures are essentially what give a part its shape, or at least help test out how that shape comes together in the manufacturing process.
Right, kind of like the molds for, say, injection molding or the guides for bending sheet metal. They're crucial.
Exactly. And what I found interesting about PowerSafe's approach is their emphasis on making these fixtures both cost-effective and adaptable. They talk a lot about using T-slotted extrusion, which I think is really clever.
T-slotted extrusion. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not super familiar.
Of course. So it's basically a system of aluminum profiles with these T-shaped slots running along their length. And the beauty of it is that you can easily connect these profiles together using standard hardware and create these really robust and customizable frames and structures. So for forming fixtures, it allows you to create a framework that's incredibly adjustable. You can add, remove, or reposition components really easily.
I see. So it's a more modular approach than, say, welding a custom fixture from scratch every time.
Exactly. And on top of that, they also incorporate 3D printed parts. So if a particular forming process requires a unique shape or feature, they can just design and print it, adding another layer of customization.
Makes sense. And it plays into that whole idea of agile manufacturing, right? Being able to quickly adapt and make changes without breaking the bank.
Absolutely. And speaking of agility, I think the no-touch tools they've developed are a brilliant example of adapting to the changing needs of manufacturing, specifically how we approach safety in an increasingly automated world.
Oh, yeah, no-touch tools. It's something I've been seeing more and more of. It makes sense, though, with all the emphasis on machine guarding and keeping workers safe. But how do you actually interact with the machinery if everything's guarded up?
Well, that's where these no-touch tools come in. The whole philosophy behind them is to allow workers to perform tasks without having to put their hands anywhere near the danger zone.
That's smart. And I imagine pretty reassuring for the workers, too.
Absolutely. And PowerSafe has come up with some pretty ingenious designs. They have things like articulating arm sanders so you can sand down a part that's behind a guard without reaching in, or specialized rakes and pushers to position materials without getting your hands too close to the machinery.
I can see how those would be incredibly useful. It's all about maintaining productivity while prioritizing safety, which is really important.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this idea of, combining different technologies to solve problems is really apparent in how PowerSafe is using 3D printing. We always hear about it in prototyping, but they're taking it a step further and integrating it into the actual manufacturing process.
That's interesting. How so?
Well, they're using both filament and resin-based 3D printers to create custom parts. But it's not just about the complexity of the designs they can achieve, it's about the versatility. They're able to create parts in different sizes, shapes, and materials, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
I see. So they're not just using 3D printing for one-off prototypes, they're actually creating functional parts that can be used in the production line itself.
Exactly. And those parts can then be integrated into custom fixtures to really fine-tune things.
Yeah.
For example, they might 3D print a specialized gripper for a robotic arm that perfectly matches the shape of a component, which can make the handling process more precise and efficient.
Ah, so it's all about finding those specific areas where 3D printing can really add value and improve the overall manufacturing workflow.
Exactly. And the final piece of the puzzle that we need to talk about is test fixtures. These are really interesting because they're all about bringing more automation and data into the quality control process.
Yeah, quality control is essential. If you're not consistently producing high-quality products, it doesn't matter how efficient or innovative your other processes are.
So true. And the way PowerSafe is approaching test fixtures is by semi-automating the inspection process. They're using precision device technology to take precise measurements and then record that data.
That's smart. It not only helps to ensure accuracy and consistency, but it also allows for better data tracking and analysis.
Right. And that's something they emphasized a lot. Being able to capture and analyze data is crucial for identifying potential issues early on and continuously improving the manufacturing process.
I'm seeing a theme here. It seems like adaptability, safety, and data-driven decision-making are really at the core of PowerSafe's approach.
Absolutely. They're focused on creating solutions that are flexible, keep workers safe, and provide the data needed to make informed decisions.
So, to recap, we've got forming fixtures that prioritize cost-effectiveness and adaptability using T-slotted extrusion and 3D printing. Then there are the no-touch tools designed to keep workers safe in an automated environment. And let's not forget the integration of 3D printing into actual manufacturing processes to create customized functional parts. And finally, we have those test fixtures that are semi-automating quality control and bringing in more data analysis.
You got it. And it's all about creating a safer, more efficient, and ultimately more adaptable manufacturing environment.
It's amazing to see how different technologies and approaches are coming together to really push the boundaries of what's possible in manufacturing.
It really is. So as we wrap up, I have a question for our listeners. After hearing about these advancements, in part fixturing and tooling, what area in your own work or field do you think could benefit the most from taking a fresh look at these kinds of solutions? Something worth pondering, for sure. And if you're interested in learning more about PowerSafe Automation and the specific solutions they offer, you can visit them at 129 North Main Street in Wolcottville, Indiana. That's 46795. Or you can give them a call at 844-520-7233. They're also on Facebook and LinkedIn, so be sure to check them out. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. It's been a fascinating exploration.
Absolutely. Really insightful stuff.